This is the part 2 of the one about the earths and the natural history and all that. Enjoy. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind, on the earth. And it was so. The great oxygen catastrophe. The great oxygenation event of the GOE, also called the oxygen catastrophe or the oxygen crisis or the great oxidation, was the biologically induced appearance of free oxygen, O2, in Earth's atmosphere. Geological, isotropic, and chemical evidence suggests this major environmental change happened about 2.4 billion years ago. Cyanobacteria, which appeared about 200 million years before the great oxygen event, began producing oxygen by photosynthesis. Before the GOE, any free oxygen that was produced was chemically captured and dissolved by iron or organic matter. For example, at today's rates of photosynthesis, which are much greater than those in the land plant free Precambrian, the key is when land plants happen, modern atmospheric O2 levels could be produced in about 2,000 years. Alright, next verse. And God said, let there be lights in the sky and the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Lights in the sky. Additionally, the free oxygen reacted with atmospheric methane, a greenhouse gas, reducing its concentration and thereby triggering the Huronian glaciation, possibly the longest snowball Earth episode. In other words, the Earth was completely covered with ice because the atmosphere changed, letting heat out. Free oxygen has been an important constituent of the atmosphere ever since. Alright, so in other words, this would have been the first time that you could have seen the sun and the moon and the stars. And it's important to note in Genesis that it says God made. It's the word asah. It means not necessarily to make something new. It's more like do a job or a work or put someone in charge of a task. Whereas when it says He created, it's always the word bara, which means God made something new for the first time. Alright, and just this follows the Babylonian creation story, and we're going to look at the Babylonian creation story in a later video. But basically, what we're doing here is we're following the Babylonian story, and Genesis is going to try to one-up it at every point. But in the Babylonian story, Marduk puts the gods to rule over things. He puts them in the sky to rule over things. And this is, Genesis says, let there be lights in the heavens to rule over the day and the night. He's following that. And that's not when those gods were created in the Enuma Elish. And we shouldn't draw that that's when the sun was created. And if we follow this, according to the science, this would have been the first time you could actually see the sun and the moon and the stars, because we had this heavy CO2 atmosphere keeping the earth warm. So anyway, why did we skip the first life forms in Genesis? This is important because of the Enuma Elish and what Genesis is doing with that. Genesis is going to skip over things because it's just commenting on the ancient gods that people worshipped and saying that thing you think is a god, this is when the one God made that. So it's not going to talk about, cyanobacteria, or it's going to talk about plants on land, because that's what people worshipped as gods. The sun and the moon, the lights in the sky is what people worshipped as gods. No one worshipped dinosaurs. It's going to skip all kinds of stuff that people didn't worship, and it's going to talk about the gods people worship. And that is part of our goggles that we put on with this text. We think this text is about our questions, and it's about the questions people had back then. And the questions people had back then was Ea a god? Was Tiamat a god? Was Marduk a god? And it's saying, no, no, no. We'll catch you on the third part of this video.